Welcome to the President's Forum podcast. Today we're joined by Forbes contributor Michael Nietzel. Michael is President Emeritus of Missouri State University. He also served as a senior policy advisor for Missouri Governor Jay Nixon. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the President's Forum podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
In a recent Forbes article, you wrote about the military's tuition assistance program. Can you tell us a little bit about the program and the original motives behind that program?
Yeah. The tuition assistance program is a program that pays for college tuition, and it can cover 2-year college, 4-year bachelor's degrees, graduate education for active service members, and for those who are in military service members, and for those who are also in the National Guard. The GI Bill, of course, is for veterans, but tuition assistance is a support program for active military, and its original intent was to be both a recruiting tool and a retention tool for service members.
Right.
It also, of course, addresses professional development interests that the military has in its service members, as well as their careers after they leave the military. Actually, tuition assistance has been around for about 40 years. It was authorized back in the 1980s.
Okay.
And it's gradually developed into a fairly significant program. And in any given year, you have between 200 and 300,000 active military in the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force who take advantage of the program. The Department of Defense told me that last year they took over 600,000 courses that were supported through the tuition assistance program.
So, this tuition assistance, then you mentioned recruiting tool, retention tool. What's the thinking behind that for the United States military? Are they out promoting, hey, if you join, these are the educational opportunities that are available for you?
They do promote it as a benefit, and it's significant now because, as you may know, the various branches of the military service have had some difficulty meeting their recruitment goals recently. Now, for the current year, it's a mixed bag. Some are going to probably hit their targets. Some are going to fall maybe just a little bit short. But this is one of the benefits that the Department of Defense indicates many enlistees, active service members identify as one of the main benefits of being in the military. So it is effective, although, as I know you're going to want to talk about, it probably is losing a little bit of its.
Yeah, let's get into that. Into that. What's happening?
Well, here's what's happening. And I got interested in this because I did an interview with one of your presidents, David Scable, president of Excelsior University, who's
right.
an institution in the President's Forum. And I was interested in talking to him because Excelsior has over 40% of its students are military. In the course of getting prepared for that, I discovered that the difficulty with tuition assistance is that the services put a cap on the reimbursement. And right now that cap is $250 a credit hour or $4,500 per calendar year. And here's the problem. The average credit hour at a public institution is over $400, and the average credit hour at private institutions is in excess of $1,400. So institutions either have to ask service members to make up the difference between what the Department of Defense pays for that credit hour and what the institution charges, or they have to accept the $250 credit hour and essentially lose money in terms of being a provider to those servicemen and women. The upshot of that is that while institutions used to spend a lot of time and some of their own dollars in recruiting service members through the tuition assistance program. They're much less inclined to do that now because they don't see it uh, to make financial sense for them.
Right.
Now, you have some institutions that have maintained the policy of accepting 250. Your members are a good example of that, your institutions. But others have gradually just let this wither because they don't want to be discounting tuition by, in some cases, 50, 60, 70%. So that's the dilemma that we have. It's a popular program, it's widely used, but not as widely available as it once was because institutions are kind of quietly walking away from it with this cap that is in place.
Right. It never was indexed to inflation. And so over the years, as tuition has outpaced, inflation itself, you even have more growth in cost, and it's never been made up for in the allocation in the government budget.
That's right. It has not kept pace with the inflation in educational costs that's occurred over the years. And educational inflation tends to be a bit higher
Right.
than just normal inflation indexes because it's so intense on the personnel side,
Right.
uh, and and with the benefit costs that you have for those personnel. So no, it's become a problem that it just hasn't kept pace.
So what can change? What needs to change if we're going to incentivize higher ed institutions to continue to use it? Which, by the way, then will help the military continue to use it to recruit. And I mean, I think I can make a pretty direct line to this is a national defense issue.
It is, and David Scable was careful to point out the national security implications of the military not being able to meet their enlistment goals,
Right.
and it is significant. Well, the solution that David informed me the President's Forum is pursuing, which would benefit not just those institutions but others, is first of all raise that cap on the per credit hour reimbursement. And I think they pegged their ask to $450 per credit hour, which would get you to about the average charged at public institutions. It'd still be significantly below that at privates, um, but public institutions are the ones that are shouldering the most of the tuition assistance enrollment anyway.
Right.
So lift the 250 to 450, and then you'd probably also want to take the annual cap off of $4,500. Now,
Right.
a lot of service people aren't going to be able to take a full load because most of them are doing this through distance education. They're doing it in the evening, on weekends. So they're not going to be taking a full load, but there are a few that can, and so lifting that annual limit would be
Right.
advisable as well. And then the third thing I think you have to do is recognize that when you have service members who are participating through tuition assistance or who are just taking courses at your institution, there are things you need to do to address their special needs. One is the scheduling of classes. Second is a good transfer policy that recognizes the skills that soldiers have developed in the military that may make sense for transfer to
Right.
university credit. And the third is to provide some of the extra services that adults need when they re-enroll or continue to enroll in college. So I think it's a financial issue in terms of those caps, but it's also making sure that universities have the right student supports in place to address the particular needs that members of the
Right.
military have when they're going to college.
Well, Michael, I'm glad that you connected with David on this because this is a really important issue for underserved communities who have a disproportionate representation in the United States military. And the idea that we can reinvigorate this program and keep it strong, I think does a couple things. One is it helps those underserved communities have more access to education. And two, it essentially, it's a national security issue. We can use this as a tool to recruit and retain. And never before in our history have we needed tools to recruit and retain to the US, armed services. So I think it's a great thing that you wrote about. I'm glad that you're highlighting the needs here and the things that have to change. And you can't just create a program like this, set it, wind it up and let it go, and decades later hope that it's still as effective as it was at the beginning. Because
No,
as you mentioned, it
you're
needs a
exactly right. And the Department of Defense spends a lot of money on this program. But for them to maximize the value of it, I think attention needs to be given to the caps. And I'm glad that your group of presidents have taken that on as a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey,
And
we
it makes sense
appreciate
for
your
them to do it, given how uh, large of an enrollment they have of people in the military.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that between Excelsior and National and University of Massachusetts Global
Right.
and WGU and Southern New Hampshire, I mean, I could call out almost every one of our members,
Correct.
and the proportion of military learners that are enrolled there is pretty significant. So yeah, all of our institutions are actively engaged in this
Right.
issue. Yeah, well, we appreciate you shining a light on this and the focus on this, and we want to welcome you back anytime you have an issue that you're working on that impacts, these adult learners, these working learners, learners from underserved communities. Those are all the learners that we want to focus on. So, in your future articles at Forbes, if you have a focus on any of those, you're always welcome to come back here in here on the President's Forum podcast and talk through the issue.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.